stop, collaborate, and mention some great research that is worth pitching. This might need your attention. Energy is for the retention. Yeah. So today we have some great research from a specialized stock analyst who also has a Substack called the Peach Pit. He's also a Discord member. So after you watch this video, you actually want to hop in the Discord, even talk to him, ask him a question. He's in there as well. It's a good friend of mine who I just got connected with. But if we meet, you're a great friend of mine. But if you follow my videos and you keep up with this, talking about energy, it's nothing new to you. And in fact, a lot of you like it when we talk about what's going on in energy stocks. And today we're going to cover a report on ENPH titled, "It's not in phase, it's a life cycle." That is the type of solid pun content that makes me click on an article. Already, we're off to a good start. ENPH provides a complete solution for residential solar power with the ability to completely remove the home from the grid. Despite the fierce competition in the PV market, this is the photovoltaic market. This is simply just companies that make technology that turns sunlight into energy, right? ENPH has successfully developed and expanded their brand from microinverters to complete power storage and transmission for energy for a microgrid. Now, it's important to note that a microgrid is a localized power system that can work in conjunction with a larger system, or it could work independently. This is great for your doomsday preppers, a lot of those out here in the Midwest, I can tell you that for sure, or just people who want to be self-sustaining. And if you remember, I did a podcast about 6 months ago with two design electrical engineers who told us that in the future, these are going to become more and more prevalent, and is probably the best path towards making a more stable system in general. And so I think the timing of him writing this is really important. I think a lot of people also speculating on if this stock's a good buy at its current valuation, and I do think that he's going to cover that. So let's go ahead and dive in. It's also important to mention that this was published on Seeking Alpha. He also has more articles on Seeking Alpha as well, so you can read some of his stuff on there. So let's dive right on in. By and large, my top concern is the state of consumer spending. As I have previously discussed in articles published on the Peach Pit, consumer spending, savings, and credit go hand in hand, are controlled by inflation. A major challenge that many Americans are facing, let alone just about anyone around the world, are the increased costs of living. To make matters worse, the Federal Reserve has been aggressively increasing interest rates, making it more challenging for consumers to finance big ticket items such as new cars, homes, or more specific to this note, PVs, or solar panels. A new solar panel installation can cost anywhere between $16,000 and $23,000, with the average APR costing anywhere between 7.75% and 35.99% with consumers with the highest quality credit scores. Call me old-fashioned, and I may not be the most altruistic person, but I am a firm believer in following the economics as opposed to the idealistic views of society. Natural gas is cheap and affordable, widely used, widely distributed, and very abundant. Something that we talked about a lot with those engineers, right? I mean, he doesn't have an engineering background, so I think it's pretty great that he's come to these similar conclusions, ones that I've been talking about a lot as well. Depending on one's understanding of scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, PVs may appear to be cleaner than burning natural gas to heat and cool one's home. Though, if you're like me and more interested in the broader effects of manufacturing PVs, you're probably wondering where all these resources are sourced. To give you a hint, it's not in our backyard. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, 100% of the arsenic, gallium, and indium are sourced from foreign mines. 50% of germanium and tellurium are in the same boat. Do bear in mind that these are from a 2018 survey and figures may differ today. And if we actually have ChatGPT pull up the 2022 report, it actually confirms that this is still the case. That information is actually up to date. Minerals for battery storage are primarily imported and manufactured overseas as well. 100% of graphite and manganese and 61% of cobalt and 50% of lithium are all sourced from foreign mines. One point to note is that the IRA requires 40% of materials to be sourced domestically for government incentives on purchasing new electric vehicles. Reading through the IRA, the language is murky on whether this requirement applies to home electric storage systems in relation to the 30% tax credit for solar-powered microgrids. However, this detail is sorted out as soon as ENPH sources all home batteries from 2 factories based in China. Now, this is really interesting because I knew of this rule when it applied to electric vehicles. And this is a big deal because it helps drive sales for electric vehicles, right? And so if we don't get that 30% tax credit for the solar power microgrids, that could also really hurt sales for the company. Well, if it worked like electric vehicles, at least. For electric vehicles, that money goes back to the consumer, right? But not all tax credits always go to the consumer. Sometimes they also go to the company. Either way, it would be detrimental to them. And if we continue reading, he uses energy equivalency to compare the different sources of power, also coming to the factual conclusion that nuclear power is incredible, producing 1 to 100 times more energy than solar panels and 20 times more efficient, saying that it's baffling that renewables are being adopted at a higher rate than new nuclear power plant builds. Yes, I've come to the same conclusion, my friend. It is actually baffling, and it's more baffling that people still have this negative conceptualization of what nuclear could bring for us. All these doomsday stories from people that were traumatized in the 70s and don't think technology has improved over the course of 60 years. Another policy mishap includes NEM 3.0 in California. One of the values PV energy brought to the homeowner was the ability to sell excess power generation back to the utility. That's the utility company, right? Every state seems to have different legislature regarding to how this is executed, whether it's through the state or directly through the utility company. That's really annoying because then you got to look up how it is in your state. You have to be a super well-informed consumer, right? CNET reports that New York, Idaho, Illinois, Maryland, Oregon, South Carolina, and Texas had the most beneficial instances for the consumer. That's not a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are some dense areas, though. It's pretty good. New York has some of the highest net metering rates and will pay out anywhere between 69 cents and $1 per kilowatt hour on top of the 25% tax credit, upwards of $5,000 for installation. South Carolina has one of the strongest incentive programs, provided tax credit of 25% of the cost of the system, upwards of $35,000 or 50% of the taxpayer's tax liability for the year. That's really good, actually. Every state's net metering program is at the will of the utility company the consumer chooses to connect with. NEM 3.0, on the other hand, has created somewhat of a disadvantage to anyone purchasing PVs after April 15th, 2023 deadline. Oh, that's interesting. Essentially, it claws back on the payments because that happened this year, right? So depending on what this says, I wonder if we're going to see a slowdown or what, we'll have him tell us. Essentially, it claws back on the payments to the PV owners selling power back to the grid, reducing payments from 35 cents down to 5 cents to 8 cents per kilowatt hour. It also lengthened the break-even time frame from 5 to 6 years upwards to 10 years, giving that PVs have a life expectancy of 25 years. This has reduced years of profitable generation by 20%. That's a gut punch. Though the panels still pay for themselves over the long run, the overall point of independently generating and selling power back to the grid became significantly less appealing, especially when considering the viability and volatility of the grid in California. Yeah. Ultimately, consumers' continuation to flock towards investing in PVs will be determined by the cost of power at the utility level. As we discussed in a previous note, natural gas accounts for just under 40% of the total power mix in California, with 30% of the total power mix being imported from neighboring states. According to the EIA, February 2023 residential natural gas in California cost $25.97 as compared to Texas at $13.70. In relation to these figures, it will come down to whether the consumer is purchasing for today or purchasing for the future. And that's really interesting because it seems like there's a bit of a time clock on solar on when it will have its limelight. This might be a company that comes and goes. Actually, what was the title of the article, right? It's not a phase, it's a life cycle. Despite these changing policies, solar power has taken ground stateside. Solar generation in North America has reached 6.5 gigawatts in 2022, with residential generation accounting for 1.7 gigawatts per hour. Europe's residential solar market was over 10 for 2022 and is expected to grow 25 to 30% annually. It's not going to take them long to be nearly double the size of our market. It's going to be rapid. Through the U.S. and though U.S. and EU economics differ substantially when it comes to power generation, the U.S. is arguably in better shape than EU. Yeah, We're a lot cheaper than they are in general, because on top of that, we're a huge natural resource. Russia isn't the only one. We just don't utilize all of ours. Europe imports the majority of their natural gas and coal. We've talked about this a lot on this YouTube channel. We're going over the rates, making sure to factor in for exchange rate. It's good for total power mix in the U.S. The average cost for electricity is 16 cents. California costs it at 27 cents. The caps of 5 to 8 cents. Connecticut is the most expensive, well below the average cost across the EU. It only makes sense that residents across the EU would be more prone to adapt solar power to electrify their homes. Yep. ENPH offers a phenomenal solution for anyone's power needs. Their offerings include power production through their microinverters, heat pumps, power storage, power distribution, and dual directional EV home charging stations, and to tie it all together, a cloud-based application that interconnects all the products to an autonomous microgrid. ENPH also controls the process for lead generation, design and proposals, financing and contract permitting, installation, commissioning, and operations, maintenance, making it easier for the consumer to make a purchasing decision. Not many competitors have their hands in the entire life cycle of consumer activation and servicing, let alone a profitable and capital-light business model. This allows ENPH to be nimble and enables them to right-size their business given the macroeconomic environment. Despite solar power not being the most efficient use for minerals and materials for power generation, the ability to scale microgrids and take stress off the grid is a strong value that ENPH offers to the economy. Overall, I think ENPH is a great company, well run, and has proven itself as a profitable entity. Though it has shown operational excellence in a low interest rate environment, its time management proves this company is solvent during a tighter, higher interest rate market. At this time, I provide bearish guidance on ENPH. However, I believe a major pullback on their stock price will provide a buying opportunity for a long-term position. And the big bummer here is he was probably trying to put this out before earnings, but it's okay. I still made the ENPH puts into the earnings. We still made a bunch of money there because I had my own suspicions about what was going on there, but it was great to read that really nice detailed research. Of course, we're probably going to talk about everything I just read in the article in the Discord below. Probably send him a few questions. So if you want to participate in that conversation, you have questions of your own, you want to hear what we're thinking, make sure you click the link down below and hop in the Discord. If you want to read more articles from the Peach Pit, make sure you also check out that link down below in the description. And anyways, hope you enjoyed this video.